This is the unfiltered truth about entrepreneurship. Raw, no BS, no sugarcoating. Welcome to Entrepreneur Intel. I'm your host, Wes Matthews. Each episode, we'll learn from experienced founders and uncover the top 5% learnings that led to their success in all things personal, family, and business. This show is sponsored by Stealth Consulting, delivering clear marketing strategies, ROI, and no surprises. I'm super excited for today's guest. I'm going to introduce my guest. So through his creative house tour videos, he generates 403% more inquiries per property. Probably more than that, honestly. Is a luxury real estate marketing genius. He is known as a hella realtor. He uses his skills as a licensed helicopter pilot to give his clients a new perspective on properties. He is also a top producing real estate agent at Signature Sotheby's International. Welcome, Dylan Tent.
How you doing today?
Thanks so much for coming on, man. I'm super excited to get down to it with you, but I got to start by asking you, you're a super successful guy in the real estate and other things. You've been doing it now for about 8+ years. What's the most important lesson you've learned thus far as an entrepreneur?
I would say consistency is extremely important with any sales job. Whatever you're going to do, find something that works and just repeat it over and over and over again until it stops working. I think a lot of people get shiny object syndrome with this job and they jump from thing to thing to thing and they never gain any traction because they're not consistent with one thing long enough. Like just for a slight example, if you were to send out a postcard, a lot of people will send out one. Those typically have a 1% conversion rate or lower. But if you send one out 6 times to the same people in 6 weeks, the results are staggering. And I don't even do a lot of print advertising, to be honest. I do almost everything online. But most people are like, oh, I spent, $1,000 on postcards and it didn't work. It's like, well, of course it didn't work. People don't even remember you till the 6th time. And if you don't continue doing it after the 6th time, they'll forget you in a week.
Yeah, so it's really good advice. I think probably more importantly in real estate, but pretty much any type of widget or probably any type of business. But go back to like, what led you into real estate? I mean, you're a relatively young guy. Digital probably came up right in your prime time of your life, which is awesome. But like, why real estate? Why did you get into that industry?
Well, before real estate, I got all my pilot's ratings to be a commercial helicopter pilot. I was offered a job in California to teach people from China that barely spoke English how to fly. The pay was $400 a week, and you were basically almost guaranteed to have an accident. I mean, not really, but you're teaching people with a language barrier. And so I'm flying over Malibu and I'm looking at all these amazing mansions. And I'm like, I bet I could sell a picture to that guy at his house and make that in, more than that every photo. So I came home to Michigan and I started taking pictures of people's houses from the air and selling them door to door. And a friend of mine's dad, he had his house for sale on Woodland Lake in Brighton. And he said, hey, listen, I don't like my real estate agent. If you get your real estate license, you can sell my house. And I'm like doing the mental math in my head. I'm in this $1 million house. I'm like, yeah, let's go. So I got my license. I wanted to work with Sotheby's. I didn't know what it was actually at first, but a friend of mine that was into like wine and art and antiques said, hey, if you want to use a helicopter to sell houses, you got to go to Sotheby's. So I was the youngest person they'd ever hired. My dad, who obviously, he tied my tie that day. I was not a suit and tie guy.
Nice.
Grew up with an extreme sports background. So I raced motorcycles, did snowboarding competitively. Pretty good wakeboarder, pretty good snowboarder. And anytime we'd have a unique house, we would try to find some element that would be attention getting to make a video tour. Now, like you'd mentioned, when I started, I kind of caught the wave of video very early because most agents that were like cutting edge at that time, they would have a drone video fly over the house and put the property address on the page. And there'd be some pretty generic stock music in the background. I linked up with a friend of mine, James Cook at Cook Productions, and we immediately started producing things that were like, Hollywood productions. I jumped a motorcycle over someone's house on my second listing. I've done Happy Gilmore cameos, landed seaplanes at homes, rode horses, shot sporting clays, wakeboarded, anything like that would, and then landing helicopters in people's backyards is a huge hit, and dressing my dogs up in business suits. People love that.
So it's interesting because I don't even remember what year it was, but I think I saw one of your videos, and it's interesting to me that you really weren't even like scaling the market. You're like, you kind of fell into it through getting your helicopter license. You're kind of doing your own thing. And like, how much were you paying attention to the real estate world when you entered it? Were you just like, I just have this vision and direction. This is what I'm going to do? Or were you like, wow, like there is this massive void here outside of this $1 million house you're going to list?
Well, the first two people I listed were people I sold pictures of their house to. And when I made my first video and it went viral, people were like, wow, that got 35,000 views. And I'm like, so my goal was, hey, Sotheby's was great for luxury real estate, and they still are. But what I tell people is, listen, I don't know very much about selling houses. I don't know much about construction. I don't know as much about the locations, but I can get more people to look at your property online than anybody. And I believed it because it was true. I've always believed it. And like just on Facebook, without running any ads, because ever since they got rid of Trump on Facebook, I haven't paid him any money because I used to spend a lot of money there. But I get 1.5 million impressions a month there. You know, millions of views on Instagram, TikTok, all things like that. So, I've always been able to show that, listen, these people are probably going to charge you the same amount of money to sell your house that I will, but I'll get more people to look at it online. And that's kind of been my pitch. Now that I'm more experienced, I can get a little bit more elaborate with that. And I do have, I've sold almost, 275 houses or something like that. But, yeah, now, there's a lot more experience behind that. But a lot of people that I worked with, I would say, were like blue collar millionaires to start out,
Okay.
because they saw a young person that was trying and they wanted to give me a shot. They could have hired their friends. Everybody knows like 11 real estate agents. So you kind of always have to stick out. I see people that are kind of gun shy about getting in front of the camera. They're afraid of making a fool of themselves. I don't even care if people think I look like an idiot on these things as long as they're watching. Because when I go to that appointment and I'm up against the top producer, I'm like, okay, I'll pull up their traffic online and I'll pull up mine. And it's like, which one do you want? If you don't want me, this is a great person, but I'll beat him online every time.
Yeah, because right. I mean, at the end of the day, like to your point, it's all about if I'm going to sell my piece of real estate, I want as many eyes on that piece of property as possible, right? I mean, that ultimately is the name of the game. And you bring up a good point. Like there is a lot of real estate agents, and they're all the same from my consumer perspective. Like, how do you know which one's better? And that's where I saw your stuff. And if you look at the market today in 2024 relative to where you started, I mean, do you see a lot of copycat things? I mean, do you see a lot of realtors coming up trying to now differentiate themselves, or like what's sort of going on in the market today?
There's still people that I would say are trying to innovate and get more involved in video. But it's still, I mean, I think most people would say in our industry, like, even people at other offices, they bring up my stuff in their sales meetings and they're like, this is a great way to get attention for a property. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to do that. It's goofy. Um, and it's like, okay, well, I'll be goofy then if I have to. Or anytime somebody gives me horrible negative comments on my stuff, I always respond really nicely. I chirp them a little bit, but in a nice way.
Yeah, because I mean, I would imagine like I think there's one video I saw made me laugh. I think you like pull up in a Ferrari. Your dogs, somebody's dogs are like in dragon outfits, but like the house is a castle. It's got a moat, and you're like saving the princess. And I think I've showed that to like several people. Like, if I'm a realtor, like this is who I want to emulate because this is like, I mean, nowadays, right? My kids are 14. I have 11-year-olds. My 14-year-old is on TikTok. Like, he's on his phone all day, and if it's not in a short form of a video,
Hmm.
you're not going to get in front of that kid.
Yeah, that castle was the most viral property I've ever had, and probably the most fun video too. I'm fighting a suit of armor with a sword, and the dogs dressed as dragons was a very fun. And the score, like the soundtrack for it, was pretty fun, like the Pirates of the Caribbean and like the Shrek and Fiona music type of stuff like that. So yeah, I have a blast doing filmmaking. When I was young, I mean, I was homeschooled until 8th grade, and we would make stunt videos on my trampolines and stunt snowboarding videos. So I was never embarrassed to be on camera. And how my dad does his doctor lectures, I would introduce him. So I've never been uncomfortable speaking in front of people. I just was recently cast to be on a TV show that airs in April. It's 32 million viewers. It's on Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Roku. And when they did my casting interview, they were like absolutely thrilled with what we're doing because a lot of the stuff that's out there is boring. Um, so it's going to be fun. I got
What is that show about? What does that entail?
real estate lifestyle. So
Nice.
I get to film whatever I want, and then they edit into whatever they want. You could just, I mean, it could be interviewing local business owner, property tour, um, going to talking with the mayor, talking about the market. But my stuff's going to be pretty fun and a lot more action packed than, some of the other things they've done.
So walk me through your process because I want people that happen to listen to this podcast to really understand. Because in my mind, if I want to buy a piece of property near Arcadia Bluffs in Michigan, my option is I can call a realtor that's local to that market, right? That might know the skinny on the area, or I can go online. Are you like taking people from here on your helicopter and giving them that full experience? I mean, is that the differentiator?
Well, that has happened less times than you think. More people are excited about the videos than the helicopter. The helicopter is like a fun marketing gimmick, but I don't think it's the reason I get hired. Now, yes, I have taken listings further away than most people would because most people are just not going to drive hours for appointments. It's just not going to happen. So I've, just had a large sale in Mount Pleasant the other day. I'd fly back and forth for the showings. It's expensive, but if you know what your time is worth, which most people don't, it's just math. It's like, should I fly there or should I drive there? And I make that decision. It's every time if it's close, I'm flying. It's fun. Taking videos, people get excited. You get lots of referrals off of that type of stuff.
Yeah, it seems like a huge differentiator. So talk a little bit about that. But like, so I'm really fascinated with like where you started with real estate to where it is today, and because so many things have changed, right? I mean, Google search to now listings online, and you know, what do you see for the future? Like, what's going on today, or like what's different in the marketplace? I mean, you see interest rates go through the roof. There's just a lot of talks about real estate, and there's a lot of certainty, yet there's a lot of uncertainty for people. Like, what's your crystal ball tell you?
Well, rates are going to go down. Inflation is going to continue to climb as we print money. Um, that will make demand for housing go up. It will make prices go up. That is already happening again. 2021 was like fish in a barrel. 22 was pretty easy. 23 was tough. I made half last year of what I did the years before. But there's, people are used to the rates and they're all optimistic that they'll be able to refinance. And because there's such a housing shortage that prices are continuing to go up, builders are not wanting to build houses for less money. So new product's going to stay expensive. Old product, every house that's been built in Michigan can't be replicated for what it costs to build. So that keeps the prices high. So I'm very positive about the market in a lot of ways. I know there's a lot of, pessimistic people out there, but at the end of the day, you're buying something that's real. I invest in other stuff, Airbnb, stocks, private equity deals, things like that. But at the end of the day, all my safe stuff's in real estate. And, my Airbnbs make about 30% cash on cash returns annually. You're not getting that in the stock market unless you're Nancy Pelosi.
Do you work with clients that are interested in getting in the Airbnb space or like alternative? I mean, I know a lot of guys who like they have businesses, they keep their money in their business, they pay themselves the bare necessity, and then they stick money in the stock market, and they're kind of like scared to get into real estate. Where do you enter? I mean, will you work with clients that just want to get into that market?
See, the biggest goal is to get the depreciation, the appreciation, and the cash flow. So you have to get the cash flow. And again, mine is very high because it's Airbnb, but that's a job. You can have a property manager, it eats away a lot of your profits. You can put it into safer, easier stuff like single family residential. You can put them into apartments. I know you've dabbled in that with, Sterling and those guys as well. Oh, there's all sorts of different ways to do it. It depends on your risk factor, the time that you have. I was talking with a guy the other day and he's like, I want you to find me really good investment properties. And he's like, here's the 3 that I want to go look at. And I just do simple napkin math. And I'm like, well, you're going to lose $400 a month on each of these. And then I showed him my Airbnb portfolio and what it makes. And he's like, cool, find me those, but I want you to give me half your commission at closing. And I'm like, if I find a deal like that, do you think I'm going to sell it to the guy that wants me to lose half my money or like the 5 other guys that are begging me to buy these? Like, it's just kind of funny how people are. And then he's like, well, I guess that's a good point. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, it's just people are weird like that. But
so where do you see it for the future, right? Like I've seen like companies pop up. There's like Redfin, there's Zillow, there's all these things out there now that didn't exist a decade ago for people, right? And it's all over the place. Like, what do you actually trust out there?
well, Zillow is, they went out there and tried to buy homes based on their estimates and they lost their ass. over and over and over again. So a lot of that's the iBuyer thing has been turned off. Um, and by the time that they charge their fees, it's going to cost the same, if not more, than hiring an agent. So, now if you were somebody that got one of those high offers on your house in 2021 from Zillow, you did very well because they'd overpay sometimes, and now they're not doing it anymore. Redfin agents, it's now you're going back to like having a normal job. Um, they're going to feed you some leads. They're going to take the majority of the money, and you're going to hire somebody that's usually a buyer's agent, and the listing agents aren't that sophisticated. And I don't mean this disrespectfully to those people, but when I get a call on one of my listings from a Redfin person, it's almost somebody that's never met the client. They've never been approved. I'm like, hey, can I get proof of funds for this? And I'm like, have you ever met this person before? They're like, no. And then it's like, I don't know that I've closed a deal with a Redfin agent, so yeah, those things are out there, and maybe in other markets it's more prevalent. But here, the way the business is done has changed, but not much. It's still a people business. It's still a relationship business, and it's still a sales job. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon.
Yeah, because out in my area, like in Southeast Michigan, it's amazing to me that just going west of where I live, the houses that the builders are building, it's like 800,000 minimum.
Yeah.
And I mean, by the time you build a house and then do your landscaping, I mean, you're in for $1 million. And I constantly question, like, what are these people doing for a living? Or like, where are these people coming from? Like, I just remember when I was little and houses were like a couple $100,000, $300,000, and like they're not building $400,000, $500,000 houses anymore. Like those
Yeah.
days are just over. Or
Well, it takes the same amount of crew, time, and maybe a little bit more time and effort to build. Like you're not going to see somebody build 1,000 square foot house. It's just by the time you go through the permitting and all that headache and stuff. There's no reason, unless you're doing like large scale cookie cutter subs where you can get 50 of them in there, and this guy pours the basement, this guy, and just stamp them down along the line. But if you really want to make any money on your build job, there's no point in building something that's too small and too cheap.
what do you find like with your type of like, classifying as like the luxury home market? Like, what are people most interested in? Like, what are those top 3 things when they're looking at a property? Is there anything that stands out to you that's just like a must have XYZ?
Well, entertaining areas, in-home gyms, golf simulators, outside nice landscaping with pergolas and patios and outdoor sound systems and bars, large garages, lakefront if you can. But the amenities is what is bringing people into that type of stuff.
Do you feel like, and maybe I'm just like an oddity, like, is it better for somebody to look ahead and say, hey, I'm going to sell my property in 5 years? Like for a guy like me, like if I know I'm going to sell my property when my kids go to school, like should I start investing in some of those things now, or do you take the approach of just, yeah, I'll just not do anything and just sell the home at the time, in 5 years, whatever the market's doing? Or do you find it better if people are actually making those capital investments along the way?
Well, the highest return that you'll get on investing into your own house is kitchens, bathrooms, paint, carpet. Anything beyond that, a lot of it's personal preference stuff. And your personal preference now might be very different from what somebody's personal preference is in 5 years. So I see a lot of times people over improve their house for themselves.
Interesting.
But if let's say you're in a subdivision and the comps are 900 and you have a $300,000 backyard, you're not getting $300,000 more for your house. You might get $100,000 more for your house. So that's where luxury can get pretty tough and specific, especially when you're building the nicest thing in your area. So I'm happy to advise on those types of improvements and things like that. But yeah, that's your primary residence. Although people say that's like your best investment, it's not. Your primary residence is kind of like a savings account. You're going to keep paying down your loan, but even if you have a little bit of appreciation, you look at what your property taxes, utilities, maintenance, insurance cost. You're not really making money unless you buy something and sell it in 3 years when it's all nice and staged and barely lived in and inconvenient. Right when you get used to it, that's when your house is worth the most. 10 years later, tastes have changed. So, I just don't think that your primary home is the best way to invest your money. Now, Airbnb, multifamily, you know, car washes, storage facilities, commercial real estate, triple net leases, all that stuff, great. But yeah, I just would not expect people to have some crazy amount of exits on a lot of their primary homes.
Yeah, it's like you gotta live somewhere, right? Is the tax code still 2? You have to be in your you have to be in your primary for 2 years to offset any gain?
It's 1 year
1 year?
for capital gains. If you're married, you can exclude 500,000 capital gains. Um, And yeah, I mean, again, and then it goes based on your tax bracket on how much of the gain you get taxed on a certain amount, et cetera. And I mean, you can interpret that capital gain stuff all sorts of different ways. So I don't want to pretend like I'm an expert on it. Talk to your accountant. Don't take my advice on that, but it's at least a year.
Do you get clients that do that, that jump around just like, "Hey," or like, I would think that if I was a builder and I could build
Yes.
something at cost, I would just build something badass, live in it for a year, you know, make a killing on it, do it again.
Just did one of those in Northville, helped them buy the lot. They probably put, so you bought the lot for 410. They probably put 1.6 million into it. No, probably 1.4 million, and they sold it for 2.35 million. After the capital gains had expired, they did very well on it. And builders are not often getting that type of margin. I don't think people realize that builders don't get paid as much as they think they do.
Yep.
But yeah, if I was a builder, and most builders that I know they are building and moving, you know, very regularly.
What's funny is I know who you're talking about, I won't mention the name, but his man, his detail is unbelievable.
Yeah, those very, very, very
And I
cool
was thinking that
houses.
in my mind, I'm like, good for him if that's what he's doing because it's just amazing what he can do.
Yeah. It was a very fun deal. It was very cool to see because they have the ability to put that detail work in, and all of the stuff that moves the needle on your personal house is in those details. And people will spend all sorts of money on things that don't matter and things that you can't see. But you want it to be like the type of place that somebody would go take an Instagram picture at. And that's what really sells. Decorating, staging, furniture are incredibly important, and not cheaping out on the small things, like just like the vents in your house. You know, uh, I see nice homes that have the dirtiest bath fans, and you can just see these like cheap things that have been overlooked, and it turns off a lot of people.
It's funny, I almost called you on that house, but I didn't call you because I knew if I would have called you on that house, I would have got involved and I probably would have bought it. My family would have killed me.
It's a cool spot. Yeah.
Do you do anything then? Like, are you just strictly like luxury residential? Like, define luxury, right? If somebody has a property that like, do you have a certain type of requirement on who you will work with, or
I work in every price point. Just the stuff that I post is the stuff that gets most attention. So obviously, you're going to see me posting a lot more of the crazy stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say, cheapest deals are in that, let's say 85,000 range, and, as high as you can go in Michigan. So, I've got some pretty big, cool ones coming up this summer. That'll be fun to work on. That'll be like biggest prices ever in some certain areas.
oh
So
well, that's awesome. Now, do you do anything outside of residential? Do you do any multifamily for clients or business? You mentioned car washes and stuff, or
I just sold a commercial real estate property, to somebody developing a car wash, but I partnered with a friend. It's kind of like I can ski, but I'm a really good snowboarder.
got it.
I will, if I can do it pretty easily, I might take it on, but typically I will work with somebody that's smarter than me.
So what's the process? Like if somebody wants to sell their house today, like where's the market at? Like it was crazy at one point, then it wasn't. Somebody lists today. Is it a seller's market, buyer's market, both? Like what does that look like?
It depends on lower priced homes are still bidding wars because the high interest rates don't affect the smaller loan amounts as much as the larger loan amounts.
Yep.
Now, the people that are financing and they're, let's say, 700 to like 1.4 million, those guys have a very expensive monthly payment that they wouldn't have had, 2 years ago. So those people are staying put until they can't stand it. Um, the luxury market is doing pretty well. People pay cash. So who cares about the interest rate? And they know that inflation is making the houses worth more money. And if the rates go down, they're also going to get really accelerated appreciation.
Is a lot of this cash coming in from outside of Michigan, or do you find most of these people are from within Michigan, or
I mean, A little bit. We have a winter, so that's why the prices of houses in Michigan are so cheap compared to, you just go Tennessee, and anything that we would have here in Tennessee would be 5 times as expensive. They also have a better, governor and, you know, sales tax and, capital gains tax, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I do think eventually Michigan's going to have a big run in pricing because like Northern Michigan, absolutely stunning. You can put it up against some of the nicest areas in the country, and you can go buy beautiful lake houses there for like $2 to $5 million. That would be, 30 to 70 million bucks in other areas. So, over a long enough time frame, we're going to see those areas price a lot of the people out of the market up there.
Yeah, you would think like people from California, if they discovered Traverse City, like
Yeah.
probably the biggest hidden gem. Now, do you do anything outside of Michigan or?
Yeah, I'm about to sell a motocross track in Greenville, Florida for one of the supercross riders. He's a friend of mine. I have a partner that I'm going to work with on that one, but I'm going to kind of take the lead and use his license. So it's kind of a specialty project, but it's a very elaborate training facility with multiple tracks, a gym, an apartment, RV hookups, bulldozers, watering trucks, skid steers. So that's going to be pretty fun. I also referred a property in northern Florida on the water to a Sotheby's agent. Since we have offices in 80 countries, in every luxury market in the country, if I have somebody that wants to buy in Naples or Palm Beach or North Carolina or Idaho or Aspen or Vail, I have group chats with Sotheby's agents all over the world.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you guys can pretty much cover that area. Now, if somebody's like in a position right now, whether to sell or buy, is it best they reach out to you as a realtor first, or should they contact a mortgage broker? I mean, how closely do you work with that team to
Uh,
execute the transaction?
I very closely. So those are things that I mean, yeah, you can reach out to me first and get recommendations on that stuff because its first question is always has to be why somebody wants to move. You know, it's not how much do we think you can get for your house because you can't serve somebody until you know what's motivating them. Is it a divorce? Is it a death? Are they having a baby? Are they getting relocated for work? Do they want to get on a lake? Are they upsizing, downsizing? I mean, do you not like your neighbor? You got to know those things. And I think a lot of salespeople, they just start calculating commissions in their head and they come off as really cheesy and salesy. And you really have to ask a lot of intelligent questions in the beginnings of the process so that you actually know how you can help somebody. Because sometimes it's not the right time to sell somebody's house. And you have to know that and discourage them if it's the wrong time, even if you would make a paycheck on it.
Yeah, it's great. I'm sure that's why you get a ton of referrals. I mean, you're very direct, straight shooting guy. So, like, what's next for you? Like in the next 5 years, are you just keep doing what you're doing? Are you looking to scale this thing? What's sort of the next 3 to 5 years?
So the goal is to have my passive income be livable. I'm almost there. Pay off all debt that doesn't pay me. Almost there. Um, do some other investing outside of real estate, private equity deals that I work on as well. I'm a good money raiser. So, Barry, yeah, him and I would have a similar skill set. So raising money for businesses, I wouldn't be opposed to also getting into the brokerage of businesses because bigger transactions, similar types of commissions and fees. I think people don't realize the connections that realtors can make from the amount of people that we meet. I'm pretty good at keeping those relationships. So, I've raised, a couple $1 million for a different couple of, publicly traded companies, private companies, in different areas, things that I believe in, and I would like to do more of that. Um, my goal with Airbnbs was to get to 10 of them and then sell them for a multiple of cash flow. I'm at 3 and I have my fourth that I'll probably have this summer. Um, you know, 10 of them, you can really hire a good manager, pay them a good wage so that you don't have to answer any questions or calls or things like that. Even off of 4 of them, if I didn't fly helicopters and go to on ski trips and do all this other fun stuff, I could probably live off of the cash flow right now.
That's awesome. Congrats on that. That's amazing. Now, I mean, with your videos and stuff, I don't think, people may hear this and like check you out, then realize like, what about companies approaching you like, hey, like you get a ton of eyeballs on your real estate business. Do you do that for any other businesses? I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but I mean, is that an opportunity for you? You talk about like private equity or deals, or somebody hears you. Like, I look at you as a very what you're selling through to the luxury market, your clientele, right? What do those opportunities look like for you?
I'm working on a drink right now with a company, and well, you can see me drinking it on the thing here, but
Bang.
it's a athletic recovery tonic with 140 micrograms of cobra venom. Cobra venom's anti-inflammatory. There's no
Oh,
sugar in the drink, no caffeine. It's not an energy drink, although it looks like it. The guy who designed the can did the Beavis and Butthead characters.
nice.
Kind of looks like the Rolling Stone logo.
Yeah.
Um, I'm trying to work a deal to get all of those in all the Planet Fitness locations right now, all the medical marijuana dispensaries in Michigan, a couple other, like 75 other restaurants, gyms, and then, other people in New Jersey with bottling distribution companies. So, I did a little money raise for them. I'm a little invested in that one myself, but if you can't sell a drink with cobra venom in it, it's cool. We have to educate them on the actual health benefits because people might think, oh, this is going to try to kill me. But, that's something I'm working on pretty heavily right now. I've done some other stuff, for a pharmaceutical company that makes non-narcotic pain medicine. I did some money raising for them. I got some stock. I've worked on that for a couple of years and that's been fun. So just different things like that.
Yeah, I hate to be the first tester on that cobra venom, but
Yeah.
sounds like a
Well,
cool concept.
yeah, it's I've had 2 a day for the last 3 months. Yeah, and it's anti-inflammatory. So inflammation causes, just about every disease. So if you can reduce it in any way, there's not a lot. It's homeopathic, so there's not a lot of venom in it. It's a very trace amount, but you do feel the benefits after a couple days.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge on real estate. If somebody listening wants to get a hold of you for real estate opportunity and deals, what's the easiest way to get in contact with you?
Instagram, Helly Realtor. That would be the easiest, straight through my DMs, or, call me 248-990-0356. My phone's always in my hands. Yeah, we're pretty good with that. We do helicopter tours as well. The Detroit city. It's not really a business that I focus on or really try to make money off of. But I do enjoy it, and it's a great way to meet people. So we do sunset tours. We do, birthdays, engagements.
Where do you go out? Where do you go out of?
Pontiac Airport, we take off, we fly over Pontiac Lake, Cass Lake, Orchard Lake, Upper Straits, Upper Long, Lower Long, Cranbrook, Birmingham, Royal Oak, Ferndale, Detroit Zoo, downtown Detroit, Ambassador Bridge, Belle Isle. We make our way back at $600 an hour, and I can bring 3 passengers.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's my elevator pitch, because I've got to give that a lot to people that actually are never going to book a helicopter flight. So,
Well, cool, man. Thanks for taking the time. If you learned something, share the podcast. But Dylan, man, I appreciate the opportunity. Good luck out there, man. You're killing it. This has been another episode of Entrepreneur Intel. Thank you for joining us. For show notes or other episodes, please visit us at entrepreneurintel.com. Until next time.